These are the most insane punishments of ancient China. China has been known throughout history as one of the worst places to be punished for a crime. The 5 punishments for slaves, the law for criminals, is a good example of how harsh the ancient Chinese dynasties were. Ancient China was a very mysterious place, and it was a place where torture and punishment were used to keep people in line. Let's look into these punishments. In 1999, Chinese archaeologists discovered a human skeleton missing the right foot. The recent medical examination of the female's incomplete remains, which were found at a site in SHAANXI province, revealed that she had been the victim of Yu, a cruel form of punishment in ancient China in which a criminal's foot was amputated. The analysis concluded that she had been the victim of Yu. Before the beginning of the imperial period in China, one of the 5 punishments meted out as a punishment for the most egregious crimes in China was called Yu. This practice lasted for close to a millennium. These punishments were characterized by excessive cruelty and aimed to create the greatest intense bodily suffering and psychological anguish for the individuals who were judged guilty and the people in their immediate environment. Although there were written regulations in the Chinese kingdoms and states that matched the crimes to the punishments, in most cases, the type of punishments that the victims faced was selected by the personal whims of the rulers, political considerations, and other factors. The first of the 5 punishments, which was also the least severe, was getting a tattoo. On the criminal's face or other exposed areas of the body, illegible markings were created. These markings were typically words that represented the criminal's transgressions or the location of the hard labor camp in which they were being held. These tattoos designated their bearers as convicted felons for the rest of their lives in a permanent and exceedingly visible way. The next punishment was rhinotomy, also known as removing the offender's nose. Like tattooing, it created permanent scars on the victim. However, because of the use of blades and the necessity of bloodletting, rhinotomy and the subsequent 2 penalties sometimes resulted in the victim's death from the attendant illnesses. Yu was the other punishment we talked about earlier. The severity of the crime determined which of the person's feet would be amputated. The right foot would be amputated for the most serious offenses, while the left would be amputated for less severe ones. It would appear that the woman, who was estimated to be in her early 30s at the time of her death, was responsible for the earlier crime. The elimination of a person's reproductive function for good was the 4th form of punishment, known as GONG. Castration was administered to male victims of this form of punishment. Sima Xian, known as the emasculated father of conventional Chinese history writing, was one of the casualties who gained worldwide notoriety. It's possible that female victims of the Gong were punished by having a stick of sufficient length pounded into their stomachs to do some type of damage to their wombs. Death was the 5th and last punishment. However, there was a wide variety of brutal methods of execution, ranging from the straightforward methods of suffocation or beheading to the more extreme methods of boiling or grilling a person while they were still alive, as well as literally turning a person's flesh into mincemeat and then salting it. The brutality was intentional, and it was planned to give the victims and their families the utmost amount of suffering possible, as well as to shock others and dissuade them from committing crimes of a similar nature. The ancient Chinese legal system was extremely harsh and did not show any favoritism toward criminals. Instead, the punishments were novel and were made to be as excruciating as they could be to serve as a deterrence for criminal activity and to produce citizens who submitted to authority. Although some of these punishments might appear harsh by today's standards, they were considered appropriate at the time. Although the majority of these forms of punishment were abolished when the Republic of China was established in 1912, China's historical origins continue to serve as the basis for its contemporary legal system. Even if the means may have evolved, the Chinese government continues to insist on having total authority and frowns upon citizens who question or confront politicians. Because they're afraid of the implications, Chinese citizens nowadays are reluctant to express themselves publicly or actively question their government. Even today, the history of torture and punishment in China is used to keep its people in line and serve as a reminder of the repercussions of disobedience. That's all we have for today's video. If you want to see more such videos, don't forget to like this one and subscribe to our channel.